She vanished after church. Now her face is hidden in plain sight. For 18 years, Danielle Pryor walked through life like a ghost, haunted by the last time she saw her daughter's tiny hand reaching for her Bible in the church pew. One blink, one hymn, and Serenity was gone. No ransom, no trail, just a hollow Sunday and a mother who never stopped searching. Then one humid morning at the library, Danielle opened a small-town charity brochure tucked inside a donated book, and her breath caught in her throat. There, smiling in a sun-drenched field, stood a young woman with the same violet birthmark around her left eye, shaped exactly like a blooming lotus. She wore a denim dress, a cross necklace, and a name tag that read, "Hope, Youth Volunteer, Shepherd's Light Church." Danielle's hands trembled. Her daughter hadn't vanished, she'd been rebranded. The morning air was thick with South Carolina heat, the kind that settled into your skin before noon and stayed there like a second layer. Danielle Pryor stood by the bathroom mirror, gently parting her daughter's curls with the precision only a mother could manage. "Turn just a bit, baby," she whispered. Serenity, 5 years old and already full of stubborn fire, obeyed with a half pout. "I want to wear the sparkly shoes, Mama." Danielle chuckled, clipping the final barrette into place. "You can wear the sparkly ones next week. These match your dress better today." She stepped back, taking in the sight of her little girl twirling in a pale blue Sunday dress, white lace socks, and black patent shoes. A birthmark, a soft violet splotch shaped like a lotus, framed Serenity's left eye. Danielle had always called it her guardian flower. It made Serenity easy to recognize in a crowd. Special, protected. At least, that's what Danielle had always believed. They lived modestly, just the two of them, in a 2-bedroom apartment above a florist's shop in North Charleston. Danielle worked 6 days a week at a local nursing home. Double shifts, mostly. Sundays were sacred, a slow breakfast, the same gospel playlist, and then church at Mount Olive Missionary Baptist. The building wasn't much, chipped white paint and windows that rattled when the choir got going, but it was home. That day, 18 years ago, had started like any other. They arrived a little late, as usual. Serenity's barrettes jingled with every bounce of her steps, and Danielle greeted the church ushers with the familiarity of family. Inside, the choir had just begun Total Praise, and Danielle's eyes welled, not from sadness, but that deep kind of reverence born from exhaustion and love. They found their usual spot, 4th pew from the front, right aisle. Serenity sat beside her, swinging her legs and flipping through a picture Bible. Danielle sang, not realizing it would be the last time she did so with a full heart. Midway through the sermon, Danielle leaned over and whispered, "You need to pee, baby?" Serenity shook her head, then pointed at the children's table by the side wall, a little folding setup with crayons, fruit snacks, and coloring books provided by the church nursery. Danielle nodded. "You can go sit there. Just stay where I can see you." That moment would replay in her mind thousands of times. The last time she saw Serenity whole, alive, and safe. Just 20 minutes passed, maybe 30. The sermon finished, the congregation stood to sing the final hymn. Danielle turned to collect Serenity and found only an empty plastic chair and a half-colored drawing of Noah's Ark. The fruit snacks were untouched. She called her daughter's name once, then again, louder. An usher turned. A few heads looked over curiously. Danielle's heart began to hammer. She walked quickly to the table, checked behind it, under it, nothing. She might have gone to the bathroom, someone offered. But Danielle had already checked. The bathroom was empty. Panic clawed at her throat as she ran outside, her shoes hitting the concrete like thunder. She circled the building, calling her baby's name into the thick, humid air. Police were called within 10 minutes. The service ended in confusion and dread. Church members combed the neighborhood, checking cars, alleyways, backyards. Danielle stood on the front steps of the church, eyes wide, chest heaving, praying she would wake up any second. She didn't. Security footage was later pulled from a neighbor's camera facing the street. It showed a gray van parked near the back alley, no license plate, no distinguishing marks. At 11:47 a.m., a figure stepped out, tall, wearing a ball cap low over their eyes, and disappeared from frame. Less than a minute later, the figure reappeared, holding the hand of a small child in a blue dress. The little girl skipped beside them, unbothered. Danielle collapsed when she saw it. The case went public quickly. News vans, Candlelight vigils, the whole city of Charleston joined the search. Danielle's face was everywhere, but Serenity's was everywhere more. The birthmark made her impossible to miss, and yet no one saw her again. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The trail went cold, but Danielle never stopped. Never stopped checking every daycare and Sunday school registry. Never stopped emailing missing child forums. Never stopped wondering if some family out there was pretending her child was their own. She'd once chased a woman through a grocery store because the girl in the cart had the same curly hair and a purplish shadow under one eye. Security had to pull her off. 18 years later, Danielle worked as head librarian at Oak Haven Public Library, 15 miles north of Charleston, in a slower part of the world. She lived alone. Her apartment now was smaller, quieter, but every corner still had reminders of Serenity. Her childhood books, her toy piano, that last drawing of Noah's Ark. Danielle aged, but her hope didn't. That's what made the moment she opened that brochure so staggering. It was a local fundraiser pamphlet tucked inside an old donation book about soil cultivation. She wasn't even supposed to open it, just scan and shelve. But the pamphlet slipped out, face down, and Danielle's eyes were drawn to the photo on the back. 4 young volunteers stood in front of a cornfield, holding baskets of produce. And there, in the center, her posture confident, her smile serene, was a girl who looked 22. Same nose, same cheekbones. But Danielle didn't need any of that. The violet lotus birthmark was still there, just softer, spread by the years. And the name tag clipped to her faded apron read, Hope, Shepherd's Light Church. Danielle dropped the book, her knees buckled. She grabbed the pamphlet with shaking hands. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Danielle felt like she could breathe again, and she knew exactly what she had to do. Danielle sat in her car for over an hour, the pamphlet still clutched in her hand. The old Honda's engine ticked softly as it cooled, but she didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the grainy photo, specifically the girl in the center. Her curls were tied back in a scarf, and there was dirt under her fingernails. She was holding a basket of turnips like she belonged there. But it wasn't the farm or the produce that Danielle saw. It was the eyes. Wide-set, almond-shaped, with a searching softness she remembered from bedtime stories and peanut butter breakfasts. And the mark, the same mark Danielle had kissed every night. It was Serenity. She didn't care what name the tag said. She knew. Danielle snapped a photo of the pamphlet with her phone, then flipped it over. Shepherd's Light Community Outreach and Farm Ministry, Edisto County, SC. An address was listed below, about 80 miles from where she sat. She typed it into her GPS. 1 hour and 23 minutes. Danielle threw her bag in the passenger seat, adjusted the rearview mirror, and pulled out of the library parking lot. She didn't call the police, didn't call her sister, didn't even grab her charger. Her body moved faster than her thoughts. She'd waited 18 years. Every second that passed now felt like a betrayal of instinct. The further she drove from Charleston, the more the landscape changed. Subdivisions gave way to open land and endless green. At first, Danielle doubted the GPS. The roads narrowed. Dirt replaced pavement. She passed a faded sign reading Shepherd's Light, welcoming all God's children. It didn't feel welcoming. She slowed as she reached a long gravel driveway flanked by 2 rusted gates. Beyond them sat a compound of small wooden buildings, a greenhouse, a barn, and, farthest back, a chapel with a steeple made of corrugated tin. People moved between the structures with quiet purpose. A few carried tools, others balanced baskets on their hips. Everything was neat, choreographed. Danielle parked under a tree just off the road. She didn't want to be seen yet. She needed to watch. A group of young adults walked past the greenhouse, laughing softly. Then one of them, her, turned. Danielle stopped breathing. It wasn't just resemblance anymore, it was certainty. Serenity, or Hope, as they called her, had grown into a tall, graceful woman. Her walk was confident but not flashy. Her shoulders slightly hunched forward like she was used to blending in. She bent down to pick a fallen tomato and wiped it on her apron. Another young man leaned in to say something. She laughed. It was the sound that broke Danielle, muffled by distance but unmistakably hers. The same breathy giggle that once erupted when tickled behind the ears. Tears blurred Danielle's vision. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, careful not to lose sight of her daughter. Then, suddenly, the girl looked in her direction. Not at her, just toward the tree line. Her brow furrowed, a flicker of something. Danielle ducked instinctively. After a few seconds, she peeked again. Serenity had already turned back, walking with the others toward the barn. Danielle started the car. She needed answers. Now. She drove up to the compound slowly. A man with sun-leathered skin and a pressed blue shirt approached the vehicle. His sleeves were rolled up, and his expression was unreadable. "Afternoon, ma'am. You lost?" Danielle rolled her window down halfway. "I'm looking for someone. I saw your church's outreach in a brochure." "One of the girls? Her name's Hope?" The man gave a curt nod. "Hope's one of our farm volunteers. Why are you asking?" Danielle held up the brochure. "I just wanted to know if she's around. I think I might know her." The man didn't smile. He didn't even blink. "I'm Pastor Clay." He gestured to the chapel behind him. "Hope's part of our family here. If you're looking to reconnect with kin, you'll need to talk to her directly. We don't give out member information." Danielle's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Could I speak with her?" Pastor Clay studied her for a long second, then finally said, "Wait here." Danielle sat motionless as he walked away, disappearing behind the greenhouse. 15 agonizing minutes passed. Every second stretched. Then finally, the barn doors creaked open and the girl stepped out alone. Pastor Clay remained behind, out of sight. Danielle stepped out of the car, her heart pounding. Serenity walked toward her with cautious steps. She wiped her hands on her apron, clearly trying to place this woman before her. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but polite. "I'm Hope. Pastor Clay said someone asked for me." Danielle opened her mouth. No sound came. Her throat tightened. She nodded instead and pulled out a photo from her wallet. An old one, creased at the edges, Serenity at age 5, sitting on the church steps in that pale blue dress. Danielle held it out. The girl looked at it, then looked back at Danielle. "I'm sorry, is this supposed to be me?" Danielle smiled through her tears. "Yes, baby, it is." Hope's face shifted. Confusion, discomfort, maybe fear. "I think you've made a mistake," she said, stepping back. "I grew up here. I don't remember." Danielle reached into her purse, pulled out more photos, each one showing a different version of that same child. "You were taken from church 18 years ago. You had this birthmark," she pointed, voice shaking, "the one around your eye, just like now." Hope reached up unconsciously, fingers brushing the mark. "I don't." She blinked fast, retreating another step. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're my daughter, Serenity Pryor." The name hung heavy in the humid air. Hope's lips parted. Something flickered behind her eyes, a crack in the wall. But just as quickly, she shook her head. "I'm sorry. I need to go." She turned, almost stumbled, and fled toward the chapel. Danielle didn't chase her. She stood alone by the car, the photos fluttering slightly in her trembling hands. She had found her. After 18 years, she'd finally stood face to face with her child. But Serenity had no idea who she was, and someone had made sure of that. Danielle barely slept that night. She checked into a nearby roadside motel, Fairfield Pines Inn, the kind of place with flickering hallway lights and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. The walls were thin, and the bed creaked with every breath, but none of that mattered. Danielle lay there in the dark, eyes open, heart racing. She had seen Serenity, heard her voice, watched her retreat like a frightened animal, and that blank look in her eyes, it wasn't just confusion, it was erasure. Someone had rewritten her daughter's life. At dawn, Danielle returned. The Shepherd's Light compound looked almost idyllic in the early sun. Dew glistened on the greenhouse glass and smoke curled lazily from the kitchen chimney. But to Danielle, it all felt manufactured, like a stage set for a community play. Too perfect, too quiet. She parked across the road this time and watched. It didn't take long for the compound to stir. A bell rang somewhere inside the chapel, and the buildings exhaled people. Young women in aprons, boys in matching khaki shirts, adults who moved with military precision, all carrying baskets, rakes, or watering cans. But no one laughed today. Not like the day before. And no Serenity. Danielle stepped out of her car and crossed the gravel road. A woman with tired eyes and a clipboard intercepted her halfway to the chapel. "You're back," she said. Her tone wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm either. "Pastor Clay said you'd left. I need to speak with her, with Hope." The woman shook her head. "She's not taking visitors today." Danielle narrowed her eyes. "She's not a prisoner, is she?" The clipboard woman flinched. Just slightly. Of course not, but she's sensitive. Pastor Clay thinks it's best if she has some time to reflect. Time to reflect on what? Danielle snapped. Being told her whole life is a lie? The woman stiffened. If you're here to cause trouble, I'll have to ask you to leave. Danielle took a breath. What's your name? The woman blinked. Why? Because you're covering for something. I can hear it in your voice. You're protecting people who don't deserve it. The woman's eyes flickered. My name is Sister Aileen, she said, and I've worked here for 10 years. These people are my family. Then you might want to ask your family why that girl has no birth certificate, no social security number, and no memory of her actual mother. That landed. Sister Aileen looked away. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard. Danielle lowered her voice. Just let her talk to me, just once. That's all I'm asking. Sister Aileen hesitated, then gave the smallest of nods. She works the fields behind the chapel. If she's not there, check the stables. Danielle didn't wait. She passed the greenhouse and rounded the chapel, following a gravel path that led to the back acres. There, in the distance, among rows of collards and tomatoes, was a solitary figure, hunched near the earth. Serenity. She was pulling weeds, her scarf tied tighter than before. Her movements were slow, mechanical. She didn't look up as Danielle approached. I thought you'd be gone, she said quietly. Danielle crouched beside her, careful not to get too close. I told myself I would be, she said, but I couldn't, not after seeing you. Serenity didn't respond. She yanked a stubborn weed from the dirt and tossed it into a pail. Danielle pulled a small laminated card from her pocket and set it on the ground between them. This was your preschool library pass. You had to carry it around your neck because you kept losing it in your backpack. Serenity stared at the card. Slowly, she reached out and touched it with her fingertips, then withdrew. I don't remember, she whispered. Danielle swallowed the lump in her throat. That's okay. Memory is tricky, especially when it's been taken from you. Serenity looked at her finally. Why would someone do that? Danielle didn't soften the truth. Because the people who raised you paid for a lie. They bought you from the people who stole you from me. Serenity recoiled slightly. That can't be true. Then tell me what is true, Danielle said. Where were you born? Who taught you to ride a bike? Who was your best friend in kindergarten? Serenity opened her mouth, closed it again. Do you have any photos of yourself as a toddler? Any baby pictures at all? Nothing. Just silence. Danielle's voice cracked. I used to sing you a song at night, Moon River. You would hum along, even when you didn't know the words. You always got quiet when I reached the line. Two drifters off to see the world. You'd hum louder then, like you wanted to be one of them. Serenity's lip trembled. She looked away. I thought I was abandoned, she said quietly, that my real family didn't want me. Danielle's heart broke all over again. No, baby, no, I never stopped looking. I never gave up. Tears welled in Serenity's eyes. They said you were dead, that I was left at the gate. Danielle couldn't hold back anymore. She reached out slowly and took Serenity's hand. I'm not dead, I'm right here. Serenity let out a soft, guttural sound, half sob, half sigh. She collapsed into Danielle's arms, shaking. For a long time, they knelt there in the dirt. Mother and daughter. Strangers and kin. But neither of them noticed the camera mounted on the edge of the chapel's roof, or the man watching the feed inside a locked office. The camera feed flickered slightly as a man adjusted the old dial on the side of the monitor. The image sharpened just enough to reveal the two figures kneeling in the field. Danielle and Serenity. Wrapped in an embrace, Pastor Clay leaned closer. His face, once youthful and charismatic in Sunday sermons, was now taut with unease. The chapel office smelled faintly of old wood and oil from the power generator humming outside. The single fluorescent bulb above him buzzed softly. He tapped the screen twice, then switched to another feed. This one showed the main entrance to the compound. A delivery truck was pulling in, right on schedule. But Clay barely glanced at it. His mind was elsewhere, on the girl he had renamed, reshaped, reprogrammed. Hope. His hope. She had been a gift once. Left at their gate swaddled in confusion and silence, she had screamed for days, inconsolable. But Sister Miriam, long gone now, had told him, all things broken can be mended by faith. Clay had taken that to heart, and now that woman, Danielle, was threatening to undo 18 years of rebuilding. A soft knock at the door broke his concentration. It creaked open and Sister Aileen stepped in, her face pale. "They've spoken," she said quietly. "She remembers nothing." Clay stood. "Not yet." She clung to her, Aileen added, "like a child lost in a storm." "Then we are in a storm," Clay said calmly. He stepped away from the monitor. "The world outside our gates is chaos. I won't let that chaos take her back." Aileen shifted uncomfortably. "She has a right to know the truth." Clay turned to her, voice still even. "Truth without guidance is a weapon, sister. What if this woman poisons her mind? What if she fills her with false memories, rewrites her past? She has the same birthmark, the same eyes. And the devil has scripture memorized," he snapped. "Don't confuse appearances with providence." Aileen flinched. Clay softened his tone. "I built this community to protect the lost, to offer them peace. And if Hope, Serenity, chooses to leave now, what do you think will happen? She'll be dragged into court, into headlines. She'll become a story, not a person. Is that what we want?" Aileen said nothing. "Keep an eye on the gate," Clay said, "and call the Kessners. Tell them to bring the van around after nightfall." Quietly. You're not planning to move her?" "I'm protecting her, like I always have." Aileen hesitated, then left without another word. Clay returned to the monitor. On screen, Danielle and Serenity were walking together now, slowly, toward the chapel. The girl was holding her mother's hand. His jaw clenched. Outside, Danielle felt the shift in the air. Serenity was quieter now. She kept glancing behind them as if expecting someone to appear. The peaceful garden rows, the white fences, the distant bleating of goats, it all seemed too still. "You okay?" Danielle asked gently. Serenity nodded, then hesitated. I want to leave with you." Danielle stopped walking. "You don't have to decide now." "But I want to," Serenity said. "Even if I don't remember you, I feel something. It's like my chest remembers, even if my brain doesn't." Danielle's eyes welled. "We'll get you out of here. I promise." That's when the chapel bell rang again. Only once. Serenity froze. "That's the warning bell for internal emergencies." Danielle's heart raced. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. It's never rung during the day." Voices erupted from behind the greenhouse. A group of workers, young men and women in matching beige, rushed toward the barn. Some looked confused. Others looked frightened. Then came the sound of tires crunching gravel. Danielle turned toward the front gate. A large white van had pulled into the compound. Its windows were tinted black. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, neither of whom looked like they belonged to a church. Serenity's grip tightened on Danielle's hand. "That van, I've seen it before." "When?" "Once, a few years ago, when another girl left. They said she'd gone to a college prep camp, but she never came back." Danielle pulled her phone from her pocket and swore. "No signal. They must jam it out here. We need to get off the grounds. Where's the back exit?" Serenity pointed toward the orchard beyond the livestock pens. "There's a maintenance road, but we'll have to climb the fence." Danielle nodded. "Let's go." But before they could move, Pastor Clay appeared at the edge of the greenhouse, flanked by two men. He looked calm, serene. "Hope," he called out gently. "You're needed in the main house, just for a moment." Serenity froze. Danielle whispered, "Don't go with him." Clay smiled. "Danielle, I understand your pain, but you can't force your past onto someone else's present. She is not the same girl." Danielle stepped between him and her daughter. "And you are not her father." Clay's expression didn't change, but the men on either side of him shifted forward. Danielle raised her voice. "If you touch either of us, I will scream loud enough for the county to hear. Even in a place like this, someone will call the sheriff." Serenity looked from Clay to Danielle, then stepped closer to her mother. "I'm going with her," she said clearly. For a split second, Pastor Clay's mask slipped. His smile faltered. The corner of his mouth twitched. Then he nodded once slowly. "So be it." He turned and walked away. Danielle grabbed Serenity's hand. "We're not waiting. Let's move." They sprinted toward the orchard, hearts pounding. Behind them, the white van's engine started. The orchard trees blurred past as Danielle and Serenity sprinted down the dirt path, low branches clawing at their sleeves like desperate hands. The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy in fractured beams, dousing the earth in jagged light and shadow. Serenity's breath came in short gasps, but she didn't slow. Her grip on Danielle's hand never loosened. Behind them, the low hum of an engine grew louder. "They're following," Serenity panted. Danielle didn't look back. Keep running. We'll find a break in the fence. They vaulted over a fallen log, landing hard on cracked soil. The orchard gave way to a sloped clearing dotted with wildflowers and a small wooden fence, weathered and warped but still standing. There, Danielle pointed. Serenity scaled the fence first, catching her foot on the top slat but swinging over with instinctive grace. Danielle followed, heart hammering, knees barking in protest. On the other side, a narrow trail slithered down into a gully, thick with brush and silence. Down here, Serenity said, voice shaky. It leads to the county road eventually. They ducked into the underbrush, weaving between low pines and tall grass. With every step, Danielle felt time unwind, like running through memories she never thought she'd get to rewrite. Once, she'd held this little girl in her arms and whispered lullabies into soft curls. Now, that girl was grown and scared, but still hers. And nothing, no cult, no false preacher, no van full of hired goons was going to take her again. A sharp snap echoed behind them, branches breaking. Then a voice. Serenity, don't run, Clay's voice. Cold, commanding. Serenity stopped dead in her tracks. Danielle grabbed her shoulder. Don't listen, keep going. But Serenity was trembling. He sounds different. I've never heard him yell like that. That's because he's not trying to convince anymore, he's trying to control. Another voice joined Clay's. Deeper, unfamiliar. Search the west slope. She knows the back trail. Danielle pushed Serenity forward. Move. Fast. They crashed through the undergrowth, branches slashing across their arms, the ground uneven and slick with moss. Danielle's shoes slipped, but she caught herself on a root. Ahead, the trail narrowed again and sunlight broke open across a bend. Then, salvation, a rusted chain-link fence covered in vines. On the other side, a narrow two-lane road with cracked asphalt, empty but real. Civilization. Danielle's heart leapt. We're out, just over that fence. She boosted Serenity up, the girl scrambling awkwardly, scraping her shin on the rusted metal. Got it, she whispered. Danielle followed, heaving herself over with a grunt. Just as her feet hit the ground on the other side, a man burst from the trees behind them, broad-shouldered, cargo jacket, clean-cut beard, not Clay. Danielle didn't wait to analyze. She grabbed Serenity's hand and they ran. The man shouted behind them. Wait, stop, we're here to help. Danielle froze mid-step. What? The man lifted his hands, panting. Detective Gary Holden, Asheville PD. Your message came through just barely. We've been tracking this compound for months. You're Clara Ara Marouin, right? Danielle blinked, disbelief washing over her. Yes, how did you? I know what they've done. We've had complaints, reports, suspicions, but nothing solid. Your case gave us the link we needed. Backup is on the way. Serenity stared at him wide-eyed. So, we're safe? Gary nodded. For now. But you both need to come with me. There's a safe house a few miles from here. We'll regroup there. Behind them, more shouts echoed through the forest. Clay's men still hunting. Gary motioned toward his unmarked SUV parked just down the road. Let's move. They scrambled inside, Danielle pulling Serenity close in the back seat. As the car sped off, she looked out the rear window and saw the orchard vanish behind a curtain of trees. The sanctuary that had once swallowed her daughter whole was shrinking away, powerless now. Danielle squeezed Serenity's hand. You're safe. But Serenity didn't speak. She stared straight ahead, expression unreadable. Gary glanced at them in the rearview mirror. We've located the main compound on drone footage. They've been stockpiling documents, keeping off-grid communications. The pastor has ties to several missing persons cases. Danielle's blood ran cold. How many? 6, possibly more. Most were brushed off as runaways. But your daughter's case, Ella's case, gave us a thread. When that Vogue photo hit, we ran facial analysis. The birthmark clinched it. Serenity flinched at the name. Ella, she whispered. Is that really me? Danielle met her eyes. Yes, Ella Danielle Pryor, born November 3rd. You loved orange slices and bedtime songs. You were brave even back then. Serenity's face twisted, grief, confusion, wonder all at once. I don't remember any of it. You don't have to, Danielle said. You just have to choose what comes next. The SUV rounded a curve, and in the distance, red and blue lights flashed against the evening sky. A new chapter was beginning. And this time Danielle wouldn't let go. The safe house was tucked behind an old church on the outskirts of Fletcher, North Carolina. From the outside, it looked like a caretaker's cottage, peeling white paint, warped shutters, a porch swing creaking in the evening wind. But once inside, it revealed a different story. Reinforced doors, blackout curtains, emergency radio equipment, and a fridge stocked with government-labeled rations. Danielle sat stiffly on the worn couch, her eyes on Serenity, Ella, as the girl wandered slowly through the small living space. She touched things like they might vanish: the chipped edge of the kitchen table, the faded quilt folded on the armrest. Nothing extravagant, but every bit of it more real than anything she'd had in years. "Will he come for me?" Serenity asked finally. Danielle looked up. "Clay?" Serenity nodded. Her voice was thin. "He always said if I ever left, if I ever betrayed the fold, he'd find me. He said God would show him where." Danielle rose and crossed the room slowly. She kept her movements calm, measured, like approaching a wounded animal. "You're not in the fold anymore," she said. "You're in the world, and the world has rules, laws, people who fight back." "But he doesn't believe in laws," Serenity whispered. "He only believes in loyalty, in punishment." Danielle knelt so they were eye to eye. "You don't owe him your loyalty. He took you from me. He erased your name, Stringeth. He filled your life with lies. What he taught you wasn't faith, it was control." Serenity flinched, but she didn't pull away. "It's hard to tell the difference when that's all you've ever known." Danielle took a slow breath. "Then we'll learn the difference together." A knock at the door cut the silence. Serenity stiffened. Danielle stood and moved to the front window. A flash of headlights, a dark SUV, and Detective Gary Holden's weary figure stepping out with another officer. "It's okay," she said over her shoulder. "It's the police." She opened the door. Gary looked tired but resolute. "We've made arrests," he said immediately. "The compound was half empty when we arrived, but we got 6 key members, including Clay's second-in-command." Danielle's breath hitched. "And Clay?" "Gone. He slipped out hours before the raid, left behind his phone, his truck. Looks like he knew we were coming." "Of course he did," Danielle muttered. "He always knew when the heat was rising." Gary nodded. "We've issued a bolo. Every trooper from here to Tennessee has his photo." He stepped inside, glancing at Serenity. "Hi, Ella." She looked startled. "It's okay," he added gently. "You don't have to use that name if it doesn't feel real yet. But that's who you are, and we'll help you reclaim every part of her." Serenity looked down. "I don't even know what's mine. My memories? My thoughts? They were shaped by him, by what he wanted." Danielle stepped closer. "That may be true, but your instincts, your courage to run, to question, to speak your truth, that came from you, from Ella." Gary nodded. "And the courts will see that too. We've begun the process of identity verification. It'll take time, but with the birthmark, the DNA test, and the media attention from that Vogue article, it's almost airtight." Serenity looked up sharply. "Media?" Gary hesitated. "It's out. The magazine's everywhere. Your face is everywhere." Her hands trembled. "He'll see it." Danielle interjected. "Let him. The world is watching now. He can't hide in the dark anymore." Gary reached into his coat and pulled out a slim file. "There's something else." He laid a photo on the table. Serenity stared at it, then flinched. It was Clay, standing next to a black SUV with out-of-state plates, smiling beside a man with a clipboard, a date stamped on the bottom, 2 weeks ago. "Who's that with him?" Danielle asked. "We think it's a broker," Gary said grimly. "Clay's been offering more than just spiritual guidance. He's been selling people, children." Serenity covered her mouth. "Oh my God," Gary continued. "We've identified at least 3 victims linked to him, but the records are scattered. He used fake names, cash-only transactions, no electronic trail. He was more careful than most." Serenity whispered, "That's why he started hiding me more. I was getting older, less valuable." Danielle turned to her, eyes blazing. "You're not a commodity. You're not something that loses value." Gary cleared his throat. "We'll need your testimony eventually, only if you're ready." Serenity nodded slowly. "Not yet, but I will be." Gary gathered his things. "We'll have an officer stationed outside tonight. If Clay's watching, we want him to know we're watching back." He left, the door closing behind him with a soft thud. Silence settled again. Danielle turned back to Serenity, who was sitting now, staring at her hands. "I don't know how to live out here," she said. "I've never had a phone. I've never used a debit card. I've never even watched TV." Danielle sat beside her. "You'll learn. I'll teach you." Serenity looked up. "You won't leave?" "Never." She didn't smile, but she leaned in, just slightly. Enough for Danielle to wrap her arms around her, slow and steady. a tentative embrace. A beginning. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves skittered across the porch like whispers. But inside, a kind of calm held its ground. For the first time in 18 years, mother and daughter breathed the same safe air. Morning light filtered through the safe-house windows, soft and golden, painting the room in hues of quiet possibility. But Danielle was already awake, seated at the kitchen table, sipping a mug of black coffee that had long since gone cold. Across the room, Serenity slept curled on the couch, one hand resting against her cheek, the other gripping the faded quilt like a lifeline. There was something heartbreakingly childlike about her in sleep, nothing like the wary, haunted young woman Danielle had met just days earlier. Danielle didn't want to wake her, but she knew today would demand more strength than yesterday. And there wasn't much time. A knock on the door startled both women. Danielle sat up straighter. Serenity flinched awake with a quiet gasp. "It's okay," Danielle said quickly, rising to check the peephole. Detective Holden stood outside, flanked by a young woman in plain clothes. Her curly hair was pulled into a loose bun, her face alert but kind. Danielle opened the door. "Morning," Gary said. "This is Dr. Lila Ambrose, trauma specialist. She's here to work with Serenity." Serenity rubbed her eyes, her voice still hoarse. "Work with me?" Lila stepped forward gently. "Only if you're ready. I don't have a clipboard, and I won't ask anything you don't want to answer. I'm just here to help you figure out what's next." Serenity nodded hesitantly. Gary turned to Danielle. "Can I talk to you outside?" Danielle followed him out onto the porch. The sun was bright, but the autumn air was brisk. "We got a hit," Gary said, lowering his voice. "Clay's credit card was used last night at a gas station in eastern Kentucky." Danielle's heart seized. "He's already out of state?" "Looks like it, but there's more. Security footage shows he wasn't alone. He was with a teenage boy." Danielle blinked. "Wait, a boy?" Gary nodded grimly. "Looks about 13. No ID yet. Could be another victim, could be bait." Danielle swallowed hard. "So he's still recruiting?" "He's still hunting," Gary corrected. "And he's not finished with Serenity." They stood in silence for a beat, the wind rattling the porch chimes. Inside, Serenity sat cross-legged now, Lila beside her. The girl was speaking, her lips moving with cautious purpose, hands fidgeting in her lap. "She's talking," Danielle whispered. "That's something." "It is," Gary agreed. "But we need more than stories. We need hard evidence. And that may be where your sister comes in." Danielle turned sharply. "Celeste?" Clay listed her as a trustee on one of the Fold's shell accounts. "We need to know if she did it willingly, or if she's being used like the others." Danielle shook her head, frustrated. "Celeste doesn't scare easy. But if she's still in contact with him..." Gary paused, then asked, "Would she talk to you?" Danielle hesitated. "She hasn't returned my calls in years." "Then maybe it's time you showed up at her door." That afternoon, Danielle and Serenity drove down into Asheville in a borrowed government car. Serenity stared out the window, wide-eyed at the passing city. The traffic, the fast food signs, the noise, the people on cell phones. "This feels like another planet," she murmured. Danielle glanced at her. "That's because it is, but it's yours now. You get to learn it, shape it, live in it." Serenity looked uncertain. "But what if I can't?" "Then we start small," Danielle said. "You don't have to take the whole world at once, just one day, one street, one name." Serenity turned to her. "Then today, can I use Ella?" Danielle nearly had to pull the car over to breathe. "You sure?" Ella nodded. "I want to try it. I want to see how it feels to say it out loud. Maybe it'll make sense if I wear it for a while." Danielle smiled. "Then Ella it is." They pulled into the narrow driveway of a modest brick house on the east side of town. Danielle hadn't seen her sister Celeste in 3 years. Not since their last screaming match over politics, parenting, and pain they hadn't known how to name. The porch light was still broken. The wind chimes still made too much noise. Danielle rang the doorbell. Nothing. She knocked. A shuffle inside. Then the door cracked open, chain still latched. Celeste's sharp brown eyes narrowed as she took them in. "Danny?" "It's timeless," Danielle said softly. "We need to talk." The door closed. A moment passed. Then the chain rattled. The door swung open, and Celeste froze. She was staring at Ella, at the birthmark, at the eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. Ella stepped forward, unsure. "Hi, I think I'm your niece." Celeste's eyes filled with tears. "You are." Danielle's voice caught. We need answers, Les, and we need your help. Celeste nodded once, then stepped aside. Come in. Celeste Pryor had never been a soft woman. Even as a child, her laugh was more bark than giggle. As an adult, her tongue had become sharper, her armor thicker, and her ability to forgive almost non-existent. But now, as she looked into the face of a girl who should have been lost forever, all of that cracked. She didn't hug Ella. Not yet. But her knees buckled and she gripped the edge of the hallway wall to steady herself. Come in, she said again, her voice breaking at the edges. Danielle led Ella inside. The house smelled faintly of pine cleaner and fried okra. Same as it had 20 years ago. The furniture was practical. The walls bare except for a dusty clock and a faded wedding photo. Celeste and her ex-husband Harold, who'd left a decade back. They sat at the kitchen table. Danielle, Ella, and Celeste. No one reached for the coffee pot. No one knew what to say. I thought you were dead, Celeste said finally. We all did. Ella watched her cautiously. I thought I'd always lived with the Kesslers. I didn't even know there was a before. And now you do, Celeste said. Now you know. Danielle leaned forward. We need your help, Les. Celeste met her gaze with something between defiance and fatigue. With what? We have reason to believe Clay Dixon, Pastor Clay, is still moving people, Danielle said. Kids. Maybe others. Celeste flinched. I haven't seen him in years. That's not what the bank records say, Danielle said, carefully sliding a folded printout across the table. You co-signed one of his holding accounts 2 years ago. His name was removed, but yours stayed. Celeste didn't touch the paper. I didn't know what it was for, she said stiffly. I thought it was just helping him open a nonprofit fund. That was back when I still believed he was doing good. Ella's voice was quiet. Do you still believe that? Celeste looked at her, the question landing like a stone to the chest. No, she whispered. Not anymore. Silence settled like dust in the corners of the room. Danielle's voice softened. Did he ever ask you to hold money or sign anything else? Celeste nodded reluctantly. A few things. Tax documents, leasing forms. But I never saw anything illegal. I wanted to believe he was what he said he was. For a while, it felt like he filled something missing after Harold left. Danielle reached across the table and placed a hand over her sister's. He filled a hole and made it worse. That's what predators do. Ella looked between the two women. Do you know where he is now? Celeste hesitated. Celeste, Danielle pressed, if you know where he's hiding, if you know anything that can help us stop him before he hurts another girl. I don't know where he is, Celeste interrupted, eyes glassy, but I know who he's with. Danielle stilled. Celeste took a shaky breath. A woman named Marietta Vaughn. They were close for years. She handled most of the money for the fold. After everything collapsed, she went off-grid. But Clay always talked about her like she was the only person he trusted. Danielle sat back. Does she have property? A cabin, Celeste replied, out past the state line, near Broken Pine. Nothing on the maps, just coordinates. Clay made me memorize them, said if anything ever happened, I should go there. I never did. Do you remember them? Danielle asked. Celeste nodded slowly. I wrote them down, just in case. Danielle almost wept from relief. Ella sat quietly, absorbing everything. Then she spoke. If we go there, and he's there, what if he tries to run? We won't be alone, Danielle said. We'll call Detective Holden. This time we'll be ready. Celeste looked at her niece again, studying every line of her face. You really are her, she said. I see it now. You look just like your mother. Ella's lips trembled. I don't know who that is yet, but I want to. That night, back at the safe house, Ella stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying herself. She touched the lotus-shaped birthmark around her left eye. For years, it had felt like a flaw, something to conceal beneath makeup or shadow. Now it was a key, a symbol of stolen identity and fragile truth. Danielle knocked gently on the doorframe. Can I come in? Ella nodded. Danielle joined her in the mirror. I see her too, Danielle said softly. Celeste wasn't wrong. You carry your mother's grace. I don't remember her. She used to sing to you in the kitchen. Danielle said, old hymns. She'd hold your tiny feet in her hands like they were treasure. Ella looked at her own reflection. And now I'm just this, a stranger in my own skin. You're more than that, Danielle said. You're Ella Marin. And you survived. Ella turned to face her fully. If we find him, if Clay's really out there, I want to be the one who sees him fall. Danielle saw the fire rising behind her eyes, the quiet fury of someone reclaiming their stolen life. "Then we'll make sure you do," she said, "but you don't have to do it alone." Ella looked back at the mirror once more. "I won't," she said. They drove in silence. The dawn was just beginning to kiss the tops of the pine trees when Danielle's SUV turned off the highway and onto a gravel road that twisted deep into the woods. Beside her, Ella sat rigid in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the winding road ahead. The GPS had stopped tracking 10 minutes ago. From here on, they were following handwritten coordinates, Celeste's note, now worn and folded, resting on the dashboard. "Do you still want to go through with this?" Danielle asked, not looking at her. Ella didn't blink. "I need to know. I need to see him." The cabin came into view around the next bend. Tucked into a clearing surrounded by towering evergreens, it looked deceptively peaceful. A wraparound porch sagged at the edges. Smoke curled faintly from a rusted chimney. One truck, older, dark green, dust-covered, sat parked near the side. Danielle eased the car to a stop. "He's here." Ella exhaled slowly. "Then so are we." They stepped out together, every nerve on fire. Danielle wore a body cam under her jacket, Holden's idea. If things went sideways, they'd have it on record. She also carried a licensed concealed firearm, holstered but ready. As they approached the porch, the cabin door opened. He stood there, Clay Dixon. Time had aged him harshly. His once charming features had settled into something colder, more hollow. He wore a simple flannel shirt, his hands tucked into the pockets of faded jeans. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "I always knew you'd come back, Danny." Danielle's jaw tightened. "I'm not here for you." He looked at Ella. "I know who you are." Ella didn't respond. Clay stepped aside. "Come in, then. Might as well say what you came to say." Inside, the cabin was sparse. A fireplace glowed with low embers. The furniture was mismatched, the walls lined with religious books and faded photographs. A kettle whistled gently on the stove. "You've been expecting us?" Danielle asked. "I've been expecting someone," he said. "I heard the Kesslers were arrested. Figured it wouldn't be long." Ella stood near the mantel, eyes scanning the room. Then she spotted something. A small, wooden jewelry box with a lotus blossom carved into its lid. "That was my mother's," she said. Clay didn't deny it. "Why do you have it?" "I kept it for you," he said. "She wanted you to have it one day." "Don't," Danielle said sharply. "Don't twist her memory into some kind of excuse." Clay turned to her. "You don't understand what this was about. What we were doing. We weren't hurting them. We were saving them, giving them new lives, clean slates." Danielle's voice was ice. "You kidnapped children. You trafficked them to families who paid for lies. You buried who they were." He looked at Ella. "Didn't you have a good life?" Ella stepped forward, shaking. "They made me afraid of everything. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I wasn't allowed to have friends. I thought I was broken because I asked questions. That's not a life." Clay's smile faltered. "And what about the others?" Danielle said. "How many Ellas did you sell off past her?" Clay looked away. From the back room, movement. Danielle's hand moved to her side. Ella stepped back. Clay held up a hand. "She's not a threat," he said. The woman who stepped forward was older, in her 60s, with a hard face and gray hair braided down her back. "Marietta Vaughn. You brought strangers into my home," she said to Clay. "After everything? They're not strangers," he replied. Marietta's eyes landed on Ella. "So this is the girl." Ella squared her shoulders. "This is my life you helped erase." "You were too young to remember," Marietta said coldly. "But you knew," Ella said. Marietta's gaze was unreadable. "You think you're the only one who's lost something? We had to give up everything when the fold collapsed. Everything. We had to survive." "You survived off selling children," Danielle snapped. "And the ones we didn't sell?" Marietta said, voice rising. "The ones no one wanted, who took them? Who fed them, clothed them, gave them names? We did." "Do you want a medal?" Danielle asked, disgusted. "No," Marietta said. "I want you out of my house." "You're going to jail," Danielle replied. "Both of you." Clay sighed. "You can't prove any of it." Danielle pulled the zipper down on her jacket, revealing the blinking red dot of the body cam. "We already have," she said. "And your phone? Your emails? The account Celeste helped you open? We've got it all." Clay's face hardened. "You always had a way of making people regret trusting you." Danielle didn't blink. "You always had a way of believing you were untouchable." From outside, the rumble of car engines. Sirens in the distance. Ella turned toward the window. 2 police SUVs were coming up the drive. Dust trailed behind them like smoke. "You lied to us," Marietta hissed. Danielle shook her head. "No. You just weren't listening." Clay backed away as the flashing lights filled the windows. "This isn't over." Ella looked him in the eye. "For me it is." The arrest was quiet. Clay Dixon and Marietta Vaughn didn't resist. The officers read them their rights, handcuffed them, and led them to separate cruisers. Danielle and Ella watched from the porch, the sun now breaking fully over the treetops. Detective Holden approached them, his face weathered but proud. "You did good," he told Danielle. She nodded, her voice rough. "It's not over." "No," he agreed. "But it's justice." Ella stood beside her, silent. In her hand, she still held the lotus-carved box. She opened it slowly. Inside, a silver locket, a photograph. 2 names etched into paper in neat cursive, Ella Pryor. A name she was finally ready to reclaim. The bus station in Asheville smelled like worn leather and vending machine coffee. It was the kind of place where time moved slower, and stories clung to the walls like old dust. Ella stood just inside the terminal, duffel bag in hand, watching the bus driver check tickets for the morning routes. Her locket rested against her chest, warm, as if holding on to her pulse. She hadn't taken it off since the day they arrested Clay Dixon and Marietta Vaughn. Inside it, a photograph of a toddler with a violet birthmark and a woman holding her close. Her mother, Clara Ara Maruin. Ella turned as footsteps approached behind her. Clara Ara had that same photo in her hand, the real one, soft at the edges from 2 decades of wear. Her eyes were rimmed red but determined. "You're sure you want to do this?" Clara Ara asked gently. Ella nodded. "I need to meet him, David, my father." Clara Ara smiled. "He's going to be overwhelmed." "I know," Ella said softly, "but I want him to know I made it, and I remember him, bits and pieces, a smell, a voice, a song about stars he used to sing." Clara Ara's breath caught. "He still sings it, on his porch in Colorado, especially when the sky is clear." Ella looked out the window toward the loading bays. "This isn't the end," Clara Ara nodded. "It's the beginning." They embraced tightly. There were no grand promises, just presence. And sometimes that was everything. Across town, Detective Holden filed the final paperwork. Clay Dixon had been charged with conspiracy, fraud, and aiding a decades-long child trafficking ring. Marietta Vaughn would face obstruction, unlawful confinement, and perjury. The Fold's remaining members were being rounded up, including those in remote communes across 2 other states. The Kesslers were still in custody, their plea deal evaporating as more victims came forward. Holden placed the last folder into a box marked "Maruin Case, Closed." But he knew this kind of case never truly ended. There were more missing children, more names, more families waiting. Still, one girl had come home. That mattered. Back at the Pine Ridge Motel, Danielle Pryor sat on the bed in her room, staring at the open laptop on the nightstand. Emails from the station flooded her inbox, praise, case summaries, internal affairs paperwork. But her eyes kept drifting to the tab she hadn't closed. It was the homepage for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She refreshed it. Still there, Ella's poster, marked in bold, recovered. Danielle exhaled, a mix of exhaustion and quiet pride flooding her chest. This wasn't just closure for the girl she couldn't forget from that 2006 bulletin board. It was proof that some justice, no matter how delayed, could still be delivered. A knock came at the door. She opened it to find Bran. He held out a brown paper bag and 2 styrofoam cups. "Coffee," he said, "and possibly the best banana muffin east of the Mississippi." Danielle smiled. "I needed that." He stepped inside and sat on the edge of the bed. "She's on her way, huh?" Danielle nodded. "Colorado. She wanted to meet her father. She'll come back." "Maybe." A quiet settled over them. "I still can't believe it," Bran said after a moment. "All this time, my mom, my dad, I've been living over a fault line and never knew it." "You weren't them," Danielle said firmly. "You're not responsible for what they did." He looked at her. "And you've been carrying this since you were what, 22? Danielle chuckled dryly. 23. First big missing person case I ever saw. I used to drive out to churches just to scan unfamiliar faces. Always looking. And you found her," he said. "That counts." She nodded slowly. "But we didn't save everyone." "No," he said. "But you saved her." Danielle turned back to her laptop. On the screen, the image of toddler Ella, smiling, wide-eyed, the lotus blossom blooming on her left cheek. Bran leaned over. You ever think about what would have happened if the photographer hadn't gotten lost that day? All the time, Danielle said. But she did, Bran said. She wandered onto that farm, took a picture, published it. The world noticed, and you followed the thread. Danielle smiled, eyes stinging. You make it sound easy. Bran leaned back on his elbows. Nothing about this was easy. That's what makes it real. A week later, Ella stood on the front porch of a red clapboard house nestled beneath Colorado's Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The air was sharp and clean. Pine trees rustled in the distance. The door opened. David Marouin stood there, blinking back tears before she even spoke. He didn't ask for proof. He just looked at her. Her face, her eyes, the birthmark, and whispered, Ella? She nodded, and then she was in his arms. In Asheville, Clara Era returned to the library. The staff had tied a small ribbon on her locker with a card that simply read, Welcome home. She cried in the break room and laughed in the stacks. The world hadn't stopped, but it had opened. Ella eventually returned. She spent time with both parents, separately at first, and then together over coffee and shared silence. She didn't rush healing. She didn't force memories. She let them come, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in music, sometimes in the way she stood in front of a mirror and said aloud, I am Ella Marouin. She began volunteering with missing persons networks, told her story to families who had lost their children, let her lotus blossom show. And in time, she stood on a stage at a survivors' conference in Atlanta. She looked out at the audience, swallowed hard, and said, My name was hidden. My face was lost, but I was never gone. And if I could come back, so can they. Applause followed, but more than that, hope. Hope that outlasts abduction, hope that survives forgetting, hope that, like Ella, comes home.